Hey reefers, welcome back to the channel. The tank has turned 1 year old since it got wet. The livestock started, a few months later. We're going to be talking about my biggest regrets since setting up this tank that I hope as I share with you will help you on your journey, or maybe the next tank, that you might not make the same mistakes or choices that I made. So stay tuned. Okay, so let's get into it. Mistake or regret number one. The one thing I did that I'm not proud of is I put the tank too close to the wall. And this is probably, this is kind of embarrassing. This is probably what? My 8th or 9th reef tank. I've been in this hobby for several years. Took a little break, but I've been in this hobby for quite some time. And I made this mistake. I would like another ½ inch or so behind the tank so I can get my hand back there. Not only like just to, finagle a magnetic scraper a little bit back there so I can clean the glass without getting my hands wet, at least on the sides here. But also so I could get some tubing, wire management, things like that. You just have to get back there sometimes. So that's my biggest regret so far, or my number one regret, is I put the tank a little too darn close to the wall. Okay, regret number two. The lid. Now, I don't regret getting the lid. I love the lid. I actually wouldn't do a rimless tank without a lid again. And I got this lid from Kraken Reef. It has been fantastic. But I was quick to purchase the lid, and I did not select options to cut holes or notches in the lid for wires or cord. So, I've got the MP40s thinking that would be enough. Just running a couple of those, but I wasn't happy with the spread of the flow. And I know MP40s I didn't have to deal with wires in the tank, but I've added a couple of additional pumps where there's cords, and now they're coming out the top of the tank with this lid kind of slightly up off the rim of the glass. So it doesn't look great. So I wish I would have had a couple of notches in the back and the sides of the lid. So that's the regret number two. Don't be too hasty when you get a lid ordered or set up. At Kraken Reef, they can fully customize it for you, so you can make some notches in the lid in case you do need to run a few cords out of the tank. Okay, let's talk about regret number three. And that's down here in the cabinet. I did a video on this. It's a slide out panel by Red Sea. And it's a huge regret. I can't really even slide it out without all the cords being pulled and making a mess. And you can see the wire management I still haven't fixed or put the energy into fixing, and it looks terrible. And so I know that sets some of you off, so I apologize. But I thought the slide out panel would make things tidier and cleaner, but I didn't really think about, okay, when I go to slide it out, how are these cords gonna move? I gotta have slack, and it just doesn't quite work out. So that's regret number three. If you want a control panel or something to look nice, I should have gone with like an adaptive reef panel, something to hide the wires or manage the wires better. That doesn't need to be sliding back and forth. That's just not feasible with all the cords. So I would have had a nice panel put in here to kind of hide some of this mess. So number three regret is don't go, or I wouldn't recommend going with the slide out control panel by Red Sea. It just hasn't been great. I literally can't really slide it much without causing issue. Okay, regret number four. I've noticed as I look at my coral placement, I'm a little bit disappointed in my decision making in terms of where I put certain corals. For example, this right island, I've got this blue matrix right here, and at the top I got a blue sniper coral. They're both blue. I should have put at least one of the blue corals on the other side to have a nice distribution of colors. Now that's not my regret per se, because typically you'd think, okay, if you don't like where your coral is, you can just move it. The problem, or the real regret, is that I built out these rock structures, I put a lot of thought into them, but I mounted the corals directly onto the rock structure, and they've encrusted or are encrusting onto the rock structure. And so for me to move the coral, it would require almost losing the base and losing the growth, because the structure and how I've built it, it's not really modular. I can't just, hammer a piece off and move it. So that's my regret. And I know a lot of reefers are doing this in the last 4 or 5 years, and I wish I would have done it. But you can get a piece of little rock rubble. I have a bunch of this Marco rock, this dry rock. Throw it in the sump and get it seasoned a little bit if you want. Or if you don't, just make these little boulders of sorts and glue your corals on a little bit of rubble, and then glue that onto your rock. So then as it encrusts and starts to base out or puddle, maybe 6 months down the road you're thinking, I don't like where it's at. Okay? And so you can just pull off the coral with the rock rubble it's attached to and move it that way. So it's a little bit more modular and allows a little bit more freedom. Okay, regret number 5. That has been in my sump. I have attempted to run a refugium twice now with Chaeto, and both times the Chaeto initially grew like crazy and then died off. And I just regret it. It's made a gigantic mess in the sump repeatedly, right? I've spent a great deal of money on lighting, 2 different kind of lighting options, and so that's a regret. And to be honest, I didn't really have a nutrient problem. My nitrates haven't been that high, phosphates have been manageable, so I don't really need it. So I made the decision to add it because that's what I've always ran in the past, but I should have put a little more thought into it. And I would recommend, if you want to do a refugium, I don't want to discourage you, but wait until you have the nutrients, wait until you have the need, okay? Or feed, you're going to have to feed super heavy. I just couldn't keep the Chaeto alive, and it's just made a mess and a headache, and had to clean the sump, do a major overhaul twice now. So that's been my biggest and final regret in this first year of this tank's life. And besides all that, I want to have the most nutrients and trace elements available for the corals. Not necessarily for the Chaeto, right? So at this point in the tank's life, it's pretty young. I don't have a nutrient problem. So Chaeto, a Fuge, that should probably have not ever been brought online. There you have it, folks. A short and sweet video. I hope it was well received, especially if you've got a new tank you're planning, or if you want to make some revisions to your current tank. Those are the biggest regrets I've had. I'd recommend listening to that counsel, and hopefully you don't make the same errors or mistakes. And I know, a lot of this is my opinion, so I'm not here to say this is how you have to do it. Just sharing a little bit of advice and a little bit of my experience. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in. Appreciate all your support. Please hit that like button. And if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. And I will see you all in the next one.